Time for MacBreak Weekly. Well, we've all got the book, and we're going to talk about some of the most interesting things in the new Steve Jobs biography. Leander Kahney joins us. He just interviewed the author yesterday. MacBreak Weekly is next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for MacBreak Weekly is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 270, recorded October 25th, 2011. Inside Jobs. MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by GoToMeeting. Today's mobile world makes easy-to-use collaboration software more than nice to have. It's a necessity. For your free 30-day trial, visit GoToMeeting.com and use the offer code MacBreak. And by Hover.com. Hover is domain name registration and management that's simple. Upgrade to a premium domain and trade in your old clunkers at macbreak.hover.com. And by Ford, featuring Wi-Fi connectivity with available Sync and My Ford Touch. Now your car can be a Wi-Fi hotspot. Check it out in the new 2012 Ford Focus and at Ford.com/technology. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show that covers your Macintosh news, Apple news, in great obsessive detail. And who better to obsess about these things than Andy Ihnatko from the Chicago Sun-Times and the celestial waste of bandwidth. Are you getting an eye exam, Andy? Is that...
No, I'm actually giving eye exams here. The HMO situation is so overblown here in New England that you can get a $10 code pay for just about anything. So march them in here after the show, get them to look into that thing, scribble, scribble, scribble on a notepad. I got at Office Max. Boom, $10.
We've solved that in California. We do. We give marijuana licenses for that.
It really works great.
Actually,
remember the olden days when you just used to put on a pair of these if you couldn't read? Now you just smoke enough dope, you don't even care about what you're meant to see anymore.
You don't even care. That's Alex Lindsay to my right from the Pixel Corps, pixelcorps.com. Of course, PIXELCORPS.TV for their podcasts. Good to see you in studio. And we are going to use the question tree again this week. So pixelcorps.force.com/PixelCorps.
No, we are going to eventually get around to it. It looks like we're going to start using this over and over again, so we'll get a better URL. We apologize.
Well, I don't. Yeah, we should just get like questions that we can. You know what? We can actually get our sysadmins on that this week and have them like questions.twit.tv,
and then it just bounces,
and that would just bounce.
Yeah. So anyway, if you have questions, what you can do there, which is kind of nifty, if you go to pixelcorps.force.com/pixelcorps, you can ask questions, as many of you did last week. I think we had 120 questions.
Great, and then just vote them up because we'll answer the top voted.
Right. So the thing is that vote them up and down. So the ones you don't want to have answered, vote them down. For the ones that you do want to have answered, vote them up. And that really makes it easy for us to figure out what most of you want us to answer near the end of the show. So jump on it.
And
because
also, we are your trained monkeys here. Remember that. We are your trained monkeys.
It's our job to jump.
Tell us to dance. Just call the tune.
Jump, monkey, jump. Also here, Mr. Leander Kahney from the cultofmac.com site, cultofmac.com. And I'm great to have you, Leander, because you got an interview. First of all, you are quoted in the book, but also you got an interview with Walter Isaacson, so you returned the favor. So we will ask you about that in a little bit. You know, I just wanted to say that it's too bad there's nothing good to read this week. Holy cow! This is how many? 600 pages. The Walter Isaacson biography of Steve Jobs, rushed out.
I thought I was going to listen to it, and then I downloaded it, and it was 22 hours before the show. It was 25 hours long on Audible, and it's like, okay.
I ended up buying all the copies. So I have 2 copies of the hardcover from Amazon. I have iBook's version, which is quite nice, by the way. It's the first book I've really read on iBook. I thought I should read it on the iPad, right? I got the Kindle version, which seems so barren, especially because there's lots of pictures in it. And then the audiobook version is quite good, although if you want to get through something fast, audio is probably not the way to do it. Andy, have you finished the book?
I'm only about a quarter of the way through it.
Yeah, I'm about a third of the way.
And part of it is just being slowed down by all the really great bits inside it. I mean, it really was a very open interview. If you think it's a very open book, and when you don't get about 4 or 5 pages in before you start to see a lot of the real truth behind it. There really is no myth making here. It's all about making sure you understand exactly who Steve Jobs was, good and bad, and very bad sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. Leander, did you have an advanced copy? Were you able to read it before we got it?
I got it on Amazon the night before. So they sent me a copy, and it showed up here first thing yesterday morning. Right. But I managed to get it through Kindle on Sunday night, and I started reading it on my iPad in bed. And yeah, it's a remarkable achievement, but it's not a fun read.
It's not a fun read?
I don't think so. No, I thought it was, I became quite depressed yesterday, really.
What I did too, and I'm just curious what depressed you about this.
Well, he was such a difficult man.
Yeah.
He was such a taskmaster, and it really is just sort of a catalogue of very bad behavior. Yeah.
Although you can't gainsay the results.
Right.
I'm up to through the Pixar part. But what struck me in the part I've read so far was the Mac team. Now we've, most of the stuff up to this point we know pretty well. There's no real revelations, or not any major ones anyway, in the first third of the book. But you still really, I was struck by the fact that the Mac wouldn't exist without Steve just relentlessly dogging that team.
Right. Yeah. As Johnny Ives said, and he had a great tribute to Jobs at the Celebrating Steve's event at Apple last week. And he said, that we all paid a price for these products, but Steve paid the highest price. He cared the most. And that clearly comes through here. I mean, it's an enormous effort on his part. I mean, huge drive. And I don't know if it really illuminates it, really, though. I don't know if I really understood what pushed him so hard.
Yeah, there's a lot of pseudo-psychology at the beginning saying because Steve was abandoned by his birth parents, that wound never healed, that he, in fact, abandoned Lisa, his first daughter, at the same age that his father had abandoned him, 23, and that he was always looking for a father figure, hence Arthur Rock and John Scully, and, a succession of father figures. That's pop psychology. I don't know if you can. And Jobs himself denied it. He says, that's overblown.
I mean, a lot of psychologists say, if you want a person to be successful, oftentimes removing the father figure early is regardless of whether they
gives them some drive, huh?
Because they're basically running up against something they can't compare.
So well in the inner city.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of other components to that, but there's a lot of people that when they can't compare themselves to someone, they just keep on driving.
And yet, his adopted father, Paul Jobs, was very influential. Clearly.
Well, you can see the kind of stuff in the book where they're talking about him teaching him to make the back of the fence as beautiful as the front of the fence, even though no one's going to see it. You can see early on you start adding that level of detail.
Although, I got to say, going a little far, there's 2 anecdotes in here about painting the machinery, and both the Macintosh and the Next Cube factory were fully automated, and Jobs insisted and spent hours agonizing over the colors that the machinery should be painted. Finally said, I want white walls. Debbie Coleman, who was running the Macintosh factory, said, you can't have white walls in a white walls in a factory. He said, yes, you can, and we're going to. And they painted the walls white. He brought his dad in. He would go in with gloves, military style, and inspect for dust. He proudly brought his dad in to see all the machines. There's one machine he didn't like the shade of blue it was painted, one of the robots that built the Mac. So he painted it a blue against all the engineers' advice. You can't repaint it once it started. It never worked right. They named it Steve's Folly. And not far from learning from that, he did the same thing with the Next factory. Of course, the Next factory wasn't so critical because it was built to make 10,000 Next cubes a month and only had to make 400 a month. So they really only had it on 1 day a month. He was obsessive about details that probably he didn't need to obsess about. I mean, it's not just the back of the fence.
But I think that it's always the whole the whole picture. Being obsessive about details doesn't mean you're always right about those details. It's just, but that obsessiveness is also what got us these computers and this
Well,
iPhone.
I agree.
And so it's spread out over everything, and sometimes most of the time it looks like it hit pretty well, and definitely there are a lot of examples in here where it didn't. But I think it's a state of mind that is hard to turn off.
Right, and luckily he had a great team to bounce ideas off, because it's clear that the people around him, the people that he chose to work with, were so important to keeping his wacko ideas in check. And I think he had as many wacko ideas as he had good ideas. I mean, he obviously had great instincts, but he would suggest some crazy stuff. The robot being a good example, and they would debate stuff a lot. I thought it was interesting about while they were the iPod was taken off, but it never really took off until they took it to Windows. And this is something that he, sort of fought to his dying day. They fought about this for 6 months, every week, meeting after meeting, fighting. And in the end, he was, he just said, okay, you assholes go and do what you want. And
in the long run, it seems from this book that, and the Mac team is the one where it really seems to have worked, at least so far. I haven't gotten to the later years, but he hasn't returned to Apple in the S yet. But the Mac team is an example of where he would, if you fought back, he would respect you. And it was his position. I think this is not such an incorrect position, that if you want to make a good team, you can't have B and C quality players. A players want to work with A players. And he said, I'm chasing, by being such a jerk, I'm chasing off the B and C
Let's
players.
not give him that much credit, because, again, I too am a member of the Haven't Made It All Through the Book Club, but you get the impression that I've met people like that who are use that as a legitimate tactic, saying that, look, if you're not willing to fight for your position, you must not believe it very strongly anyway, and so you're just not much use to it. So I believe that there was, from that, and also stories I've been told by people who work with Steve a lot, that there was that component to it, but a lot of it was just that he just didn't care about your feelings. He just didn't. There are really good managers who have a way of saying, well, we're obviously not on the same page. This may not be the sort of company where we can work together to your fullest, and maybe we should start looking at things like that. He'd be like, okay, you're an idiot. You're an ass. Why are you doing here? Why are you wasting everybody's time? That was totally unnecessary.
The other thing that struck me on this book is there's a lot of tears. Steve cries at the drop of a hat in this book. And not only Steve, but it's John Scully bursts into tears at one point. People are crying a lot in this book.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the talk about what Andy was talking about. I think one of the complicated things to do great things is that you have to have people do things that are bigger than themselves, that are more than what they were going to do without you being there. And I think that there's this crazy balancing act between having the empathy to understand where they're coming from and where they are, as far as they haven't slept for 4 days or whatever, and also having the lack of empathy to be committed to, completing the mission.
Well, here's an example that they talk about in the book. Andy Hertzfeld and all the Mac team, in order to get the Mac software working for the demo, the one where he says, he comes out of actually it was before the demo, it was for ship day, they had to stay up 3 nights straight. Burrell Smith, or one of them, brought a big bag of espresso coffee beans, and they were eating chocolate espresso coffee beans for 3 days straight. They're done. Hertzfeld's on the couch, comatose, goes home. They all come back a few hours later. They plan to sleep forever, but they come back a few days later to see how the thing's doing. Jobs says, oh, by the way, I need a really cool demo. That's the one where they write, where the hello, I'm Macintosh, it's good to get out of the bag. They had to write that demo, so they go, okay. So finally, Hertzfeld, it's done. He takes a leave of absence. Jobs distributes stock options at that point and doesn't give Hertzfeld any. And Andy comes in and says, well, what the hell? He says, well, and people he actually asked his boss, not Steve, well, what the hell? Boss says, oh, well, nobody who was on leave got options. He says, well, wait a minute. I wasn't on leave. I'm exhausted. I wasn't on leave. I mean, he had to fight for it wasn't an option. It was $50,000 bonus. He had to fight for his $50,000 bonus. He finally got it. But that's the kind of thing Jobs would do. He would push people to the edge of exhaustion and past it, and then move on. It's like, okay, what have you done for me lately?
There's a really cool line from one of his first girlfriends who said, He was an enlightened being who was cruel. That's
Yes.
a really strange combination.
Yes. Leander, you got to talk to Walter Isaacson. He interviewed you for the book because you're quoted in it, right?
Yeah, he took a quote from a book, and he listed Inside Steve's Brain in the bibliography. So he looked at that. He sent me a really nice note saying that he'd read the books and looked at the website, and they were all really useful.
Like,
So, yeah,
it's
I
obvious
talked to him
that
yesterday.
Isaacson did his homework here. He's former editor of Time magazine, and he knows what he's doing. He's written several very good biographies, including the Einstein, which is excellent. So when you talked to him yesterday or the day before?
Yesterday, while he was trying to get some lunch and check out of his hotel. He's on a media tour in New York.
Yeah, I bet.
So we squeezed in a 25-minute phone call. While he was clearly a bit punchy because his blood sugar was low.
Poor guy.
And yeah, he's been doing the 60 Minutes interview had aired just the night before, and he's busy like crazy this week.
So what did you glean from your conversation yesterday?
He went into a lot more detail about Jobs'. The big thing from 60 Minutes was that Jobs delayed his cancer treatment. He delayed getting it removed anyway for 9 months, and of course this may have cost him his life. And he instead was looking at alternative treatments. He didn't want his body to be violated. Didn't want to be opened up and have part of his pancreas removed.
So he tried herbal remedies and dietary remedies and a bunch of quack
Even a
stuff.
psychic, apparently. Yeah. But so
and
I
that may have
asked
killed him
Isaacson-
because, in fact, many doctors think that 9 months was enough for it to metastasize, and it would have been treatable had he gotten operated on right away.
Yeah, that looks to be the case. No one wants to say. No one can know for sure, of course.
Right.
Because it might have spread already before. But they advised him to get it out straight away. And of course, his wife, Andy Grove, who was a good friend of Jobs and a cancer survivor, advised him to do that. Larry Ellison told him to go do it. Everybody basically was saying, get it out. And I asked Isaacson, how could somebody who's so rational, make what seems like such an irrational decision and such a unscientific decision? Here's a guy who's one of the leading technologists. Why wouldn't he have a modern scientific-based treatment? Well, Isaacson said that he was, a lot more active in all of in exploring all of the different alternatives. Obviously he was reluctant to get operated on, but
I think it actually shows it, and Isaacson talks a lot about this, that Jobs trusted intuition more than rationality. Again and again it says in this book it was about intuition for him. That's what he learned when he was in India for a year. That's what he learned in his Zen studies. He really trusted his intuition, his gut. And that's where that,
Right.
that sudden, he'd do code reviews. The person who put the code on the table, the guy, he wouldn't even pick it up. Of course, Steve wasn't a coder, as Bill Gates points out, kind of bitterly.
Yeah.
And but he wouldn't even pick it up. He'd say, "That's crap. Make it better."
Right.
And so
Well,
he trusted this gut, and in this case, his gut failed him, I think.
Well, one thing I will say is that we don't know what would have happened. Like his gut told him not to do it.
We have no idea.
His gut told him not to do it. We don't know what would have happened. Of course, doctors can tell us that everything would have been fine if they had just done the operation. But my great grandfather died from a routine tonsillectomy.
Right.
So it could have been something.
Although
sudden.
this particular kind of cancer is highly, apparently, I'm not an expert, highly operable, and it's a shame. I feel bad. It's interesting. The other thing that comes through several times in the book is that Jobs was fairly fatalistic. He said he would die young. He believed that he told Scully, "I'm going to die young. I need to do a lot right now. I need to accomplish a lot right now because I'm not going to have many chances." So this might have been almost self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, it certainly was. He was obsessed with death. He was going on about it in his 20s that
Yeah.
he thought he was going to die before he was 30. He
Yeah.
told Scully that he thought he was going to die before he was 30. And yeah, that obviously drove him a lot. We were talking earlier about what drove him, and I think that fear of death definitely pushed him to try to make a mark. But yeah, and of course, when he died just right sort of at the height of his powers. I think that's why we saw that huge. A lot of the shock. There was a lot of shock, with all the memorials that showed up at the Apple stores when he died. A lot of people felt that he was just really getting going. He was really just starting to get some respect too. Most of his career, people thought he was just a slick salesman, a marketer, a fast talker. Somebody whose reputation was built upon the work of others like Wozniak and Johnny Ive. And it was only, even up until the iPhone, I would say up until 2006, 2007. People thought he was like a one-hit wonder. The iPod was, Apple getting lucky. The Mac still had a niche market share. Even though Apple was obviously on a firmer footing, he wasn't being lauded in the business mags. He wasn't a CEO to emulate. Everyone sort of criticized his management technique, and felt that there wasn't something that anybody else could learn from. So.
Well, in fact, his first go-round at Apple, he kind of was a jerk. I mean, he did make the Mac. But, yeah, I haven't gotten to the second yet. But one of the things they said is it wasn't getting fired.
Even worse.
It wasn't getting – is it really? Oh, jeez. It wasn't getting fired that taught Steve. It was failing with Next. Of course, while he's failing with Next, he's taking this little company called Pixar, trying to convince the folks at Pixar that their business is selling hardware and software. But there's this guy, John Lasseter, who says, well, hey, let me just make some demo films to show off what our software can do. Wins an Academy Award. Steve Jobs funds this, by the way, out of his own pocket because there's no money being made by Pixar at this point. And spends $300,000 on the tin toy.
And by the way,
like, I
think all of those shorts, all those early Pixar shorts are on iTunes. I have them all on my kid's iPad. And
it started with little Luxo Jr.
There's a lot of early ones that are very rough animations.
And they were just demos of what the Pixar hardware could do.
Well, and it was John Lasseter testing animation. I mean, of course, that's what he told Steve Jobs. But of course, Lasseter came from animation. Lasseter's not interested in technology. He's interested in making movies.
After Tin Toy, Disney came after him very hard, saying, we want you to make a movie about toys, intelligent toys. And Lasseter was so loyal to Steve at this point. And this is the other side of that coin. Lasseter loved Steve Jobs so much at that point, he said, no, I'm going to stay at Pixar. And eventually what happened is Disney made a deal with Pixar, said, well, let's do some movies. Right. And, well, you know what happened. We're going to take a break. Andy Ihnatko is here, Leander, Kahney from Cult of Mac, and, of course, Alex Lindsay. We'll talk about more than the book. I want to talk about the 60 Minutes because there was stuff I'd never seen before. I feel like we've seen every Steve Jobs clip there ever was.
Until the 60 Minutes.
Until the 60 Minutes. It was a little bit of a revelation. So we'll talk a little bit more about that and more about the book. And there's new Macs out, new Mac books. There's a new thermostat from the guy who did the iPod. There's lots to talk about. Let's take a break, though, and tell you a little bit about GoToMeeting. You know I'm a big fan of GoToMeeting. We use it for all our meetings. I know I don't have to tell Alex. He uses it for all of his meetings.
On one right before I got here.
I love them. We do, this is one of the negatives about a growing business. We do more conference calls than we used to. Yeah. Such a drag. But thank goodness for GoToMeeting because they're not just, I'm on the phone. GoToMeeting, of course, was started with screen sharing, so you could show the presentation at Mac or PC. It's completely cross-platform, so you could have your keynote presentation and show it to everybody at the meeting and so forth. But now they've got this HD Faces thing, which is just really wonderful, also cross-platform. So you're looking at the screen sharing, the presentation, but you're also seeing high-def video of the attendees, and it just brings it to life. The quality is so good that you really feel like you're at an in-person meeting. You can arrange it as you want, so you can see there that's 3 across the top, but you could also have 6 across the top, 3 on the side, 3 on the other side, or you can go full screen. And I'll tell you, being able to see a client's body language while you're pitching them, being able to talk and bond with your coworkers, even if they're all over the world, is just remarkable. It's so easy to set up, so easy to use. I want you to try it right now, free for 30 days. Visit GoToMeeting.com, click the Try It Free button, use the promo code MacBreak.
He's got a great camera.
Almost everybody does nowadays. It does look good, but it's not unusual. I mean, I think these HDI sites on the new Macs, I'm sure that's what he was using. They look fantastic. And by the way, this is really cool. You can now attend a meeting on the iPad. We could do that for a while. They've got an iPhone client now and an Android client. So you could be in a men's room and be in a meeting.
Don't use the video.
Not such a good idea, but you could do it if you wanted to, or the airport or at home. Anywhere you go on these portable devices now, you can attend meetings. I just love it. I want you to try it free. The apps are free, by the way, so you don't have to pay for that. Your clients don't have to pay to join you. Just go to GoToMeeting.com, click the Try It Free button, and use the offer code MacBreak. We do thank them for their support of MacBreak Weekly. So I was, it's funny, we were doing Twit with a couple of people from the East Coast on Sunday, and they demanded to be released. Lance Ulanoff, who's the editor-in-chief of Mashable, said, I have to be done by 7 p.m. Eastern time so he could watch 60 Minutes.
Oh, wow. And
it wasn't that you couldn't TiVo it. In fact, it was online before it was on TV, but didn't you want to watch it? There was a feeling. In fact, I was so disappointed when it was, they started doing something else. I thought the whole show I wanted more, didn't you?
I did, and I have to admit, I was like, oh, I'm just going to record this, but before you knew it, at 7 o'clock, I was sitting down.
You got to watch it.
Especially because there's so much audio right from Steve himself.
Yeah, that's something that's missing from the book is these interviews. You can hear them walking around and Steve's talking, and the quotes are in the book.
From a production person's perspective, I have to say that if I was interviewing Steve Jobs, I would have used better audio.
Well, he didn't expect to have him on 60 Minutes, I'm sure.
I would have expected that. That's all.
Well, yeah, there's a moment
Jobs.
where you hear Walter rustling his notebook and because he's trying to write down what he's saying, but actually it gave it a kind of reality. And it's interesting because he had 40 interviews, right, Leander? I mean, he really had a lot of time. But the story goes that Jobs approached him at the Aspen Institute a few years ago and said, will you write my biography? And Isaacson was writing the Einstein biography, and he had just written a biography of Ben Franklin. He said, well, you really ought to be dead first. It's like, he said, you've had quite a, I think the way he put it is, it's been quite a roller coaster career. Can we wait till it evens out a little bit?
Yeah, right.
And what he didn't know was that Jobs was ill. It wasn't known at all. Jobs kept on him. And finally, Lorene, his wife, Steve Jobs' wife, called Isaacson and said, you got to do this because Steve's sick, and this might be your only chance. And at that point, Isaacson sits down 2 years ago, and they do 40 interviews, including one in August, just before Steve announced to the board that he was leaving Apple. Like they would walk through Cupertino. They'd go to Homestead High, and he said, this is where the club met. It was just amazing stuff. These pictures of Steve's office and home, really kind of simple. It's just, this book is worth getting just for this, I have to say. What were you surprised about, Andy? What did you, from that 60 Minutes piece?
I thought the money quote was just at the very, very end. Where, and remember, these are all casual interviews that Steve is doing with Isaacson. It's not like they're sitting down in front of a studio for broadcast. And so they're talking about, they're finally getting around to talking about death and what does he believe in terms of, does he believe in God? Does he believe in an afterlife? And this is the actual audio that you're hearing in the 60 Minutes interview where he's saying that, I'm sorry, Isaacson's actually recounting this, but saying that, it's sometimes I believe that there's some part of you that keeps going on and that really makes you feel good. And I've started to believe that a little bit more now that I'm facing the end. But there is also a part of me that worries that when you die, that's it. You continue to cease to exist. It's like flipping a switch. Then there was a pause, and he said, "I think that's why no Apple devices have an on-off switch."
You really think that's why?
I don't. Well, when the more you read the book, the more you realize that he did have this sort of holistic approach to just about everything.
Yeah.
That things have been on his mind since, you get the impression, I'm sorry, from the book that things have been on his mind since he was 15, 16, 17 that continued to inform all of his decisions. Right. And so I wish that we did have the audio so we could hear if there was a little inflection in his voice.
A smile
if he was joking about that, or if that was literally, truly, he just doesn't like the idea. Philosophically, you like the idea that you don't have an Apple device is always waiting for you to do something with it, and the moment you need it to do something, it's there for you. Yeah. The idea that no, it's never off; it's just sort of in the wings for you, and you can imagine all the stories that are in this book. You can imagine him actually thinking that on some level and basically saying, no, there's no power switch. Why would you ever turn off? Why would you ever want to turn off an iPad? It's wonderful.
The 60 Minutes piece ended with this picture of Steve in his office in his home. And Isaacson pointed out that he lived on a normal street. There were no fences, no gates, no security personnel. He wanted to have a normal life.
I mean, he said you could just walk into his back garden. Yeah. I mean, there was like nothing there that would slow you down.
That was really cool because he was talking about how he wanted to be in a neighborhood where his kids could like play with other kids and walk from place to place.
I share that, actually. I think that's what you want. He did live for his kids to some degree.
Yeah, and also the idea that he wanted to make sure that he never wanted to live, according to the book, he never really wanted to live in a world of billionaires. He wanted to live in the real world, or at least that version of the real world, which is pretty important because when the idea of when you achieve a certain level of wealth, it really does come down to you will only be shopping at the store in that neighborhood where other super rich people are. Your kids will only be going to schools where other super rich people are. You will be driven everywhere. You will never have to touch the filthy ground ever. And so that's really one of the many admirable things that we learn from the books.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Really?
There was a lot of talk about him ripping off Andy Hertzfeld and, all of it. Daniel Kottke, that was a terrible story.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. No.
I know Dan pretty well.
He has
we run into each other a lot.
Jet. He spends half his time in Hawaii.
Yeah. We run into Dan,
I run into Dan
a
justifying.
lot. He's one of the sweetest, kindest, nicest guys to this day that you would ever want to meet. And it's interesting. Both Woz and Daniel are very hesitant to say negative things about Steve Jobs, even though
they got a little run over.
They got really run over.
Oh yeah.
And in this book, Woz is more forthright than I've ever seen him about. Gee, I wouldn't have done it that way. I didn't really like how Steve was doing it. He's nowadays. It's very hard to get him to say anything negative about it. So it's.
But Leander, I agree with you completely. I think what I like about the book, or at least the quarter of it that I've read so far, is that it really does show both sides. And I think it's such a positive thing that this is happening. Almost the perfect point which you would want this book to be released, because I think it's only appropriate after someone has died, whether it's a famous person or a family member. You spend a week or two really just thinking about all the good things about this person, but then you don't ever try to put this person up on a pedestal because he did this remarkable thing like dying. It's really important that that sort of thinking gets cut off before he becomes deified. I mean, it's for years, weren't we all just sort of, Steve Jobs parks in handicapped spaces, and he kind of he screwed Woz. That's Steve Jobs, and that can be sort of like turned into like the folklore of, isn't it? He had a nice side. You wouldn't want to be on his bad side. I'm really glad that the full dimension of him is being documented by this book.
Well, it's so ironic that he says he wants to wage thermonuclear war against Android for stealing iPhone, wherein time after time after time, from Woz, from Xerox, from everybody else, in fact, he even says good artists steal. He quotes Picasso.
One of the things I thought was interesting is I didn't realize that with the Xerox, they actually gave Xerox stock, I believe. Apple. There was a deal. It wasn't like they just took
Xerox,
it. They actually took
they
it.
wanted Xerox to invest into Apple. Apple needed money badly at the time. Okay. So what Jobs did is he kind of played Xerox had a venture capital arm against the engineering arm. The engineers did not want to show what was going on with their GUI. They didn't want to show the mouse. But Jobs was very clever, as always, a brilliant businessman who said, hey, I'm going to let you invest in Apple. I'm going to let you give us $20 million, but only on the one condition that you let me see what you're doing at PARC. And the investment arm, which is in the East Coast, said, yeah. PARC, show them everything. So Steve shows up with Andy Hertzfeld and a bunch of others. Larry Tesler is he's working for Xerox PARC. He later went to work for Apple and Next, I believe. But anyway, Larry Tesler is showing him just basic stuff. And Hertzfeld, who's read all of the papers, said, they're not showing us anything we don't know. And Steve starts yelling at him, saying, I want to see more. And he calls the venture arm. He says, they're not showing me. They took 2 or 3 meetings before they finally got to really peek behind the kimono. So he's very clever. I always thought they licensed it. That was kind of the story. They didn't license it. They gave Xerox the right to give them money.
Well done.
Clever. Well played, sir. I mean, but there's time and time again where Jobs is just I would hate to have to negotiate against Steve Jobs. Holy cow.
If you meet enough people, of course, you talk to people who were in some of these meetings. And he was in a meeting with a software company that will remain unnamed, and he just the conversation began with, "You guys are effed. You're effed. You're effed. You're effed. Your entire business model is effed." You guys have no idea which way the sun is or which way the sky is. And it's just this long drawn out. And then that was, you got to get, that was the first words that came out of his mouth when he walked into the room, just to kind of set the tone.
So Apple's looking for a second round of financing. It's 1979. They're really running out of money. Jobs says, quote, I will let you invest $1 million in Apple if you'll open the kimono at PARC. That's 100,000 shares, $10 each. PARC agreed. And by the way, that was a good investment because when Apple went public a year later, that $1 million worth $17.6 million.
More money than they ever made with that technology again.
Yeah. So There's two briefers. There's Larry Tesler and there's a woman named Adele Goldberg. She was appalled that her company seemed willing to give away its crown jewels. It was incredibly stupid, completely nuts, and I fought to prevent Jobs from giving much of anything, or giving Jobs much of anything. And you know, it's really a great story. And I think this is one where we heard a lot of anecdotal stuff. This obviously is what really happened. Right. I've even talked to Larry Tesler, and he didn't tell me this. So Walter Isaacson did, I think, a very good job of researching this book. And finally, Jobs says, "You're sitting on a gold mine. I can't believe Xerox is not taking advantage of this."
Yeah. Well, see, that's really the point. I mean, if Xerox had never shown that technology to Apple, would they have actually developed it into something like the Macintosh, or would they have said, look at this immensely whirly, wonderful photocopier we've now made. It's now a document storage center that people can walk up to and press 11 buttons and get a copy of something that that was photocopied just yesterday, but no longer than 3 days ago, because let's not be nuts. I'm not convinced that they would have really seen the potential of this as a desktop operating system. They would have always thought in terms of photocopiers.
Right.
That's what Jobs said. He said they were copier heads.
Yes, that's what he called them.
But you know, the thing that I think is really difficult to grasp is the extent of his ambitions. You know, what huge ambitions he had. You know, he wanted to be a historical figure. He wanted to do something that really put a dent in the universe. And, you know, coming up, we're going to be talking about Tony Fadell, who was one of his lieutenants. I mean, his latest venture is to make a thermometer. Yeah. A smart thermometer. And, okay, you know, it might be a worthy product. It might be a very cool product. It looks very cool. It looks really nice. It looks really nicely made and designed. But where's the ambition? You know, this is not one of sort of Jobsian type projects.
Well, it ain't a TV.
Well, no, but even the iPod seemed like a fairly humble product. Yeah. But you know, Jobs, I think, realized if you look back at the interviews that when he's talking about the iPod, he talks about music, and about music is something that is universal. It's in all of our lives, and you know, this is where I think that kind of ambition comes from. You know, realizing that it's about music. It's about something that's universally human. And nobody has this kind of vision. You know, this is why the Xerox thing is such a good example. People accuse him of taking their ideas, but they and nobody else surrounded with that project who saw that project saw its potential. He was one of the only one who thought this is the universal computing interface. Well, and I think we should bring it to, you know, it's everybody.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, you know, they say a lot of great inventions come from a complaint. Like they start with a complaint.
Scratching an itch.
You know, there's something there, and he just had a lot of complaints. And a lot of really itchy. It turned out that his complaints were very close to what a lot of us, a lot of other people wanted as well. I mean, I had the same. I remember when I had not gotten an MP3 player. You know, frustrated with, you know, trying to get one to work and so on and so forth. And even when the iPod came out, I was like, oh, that's too expensive. I'm not buying that. You know, and so then I started looking for cheaper ones and trying to figure it out. And before I knew it, I finally bought one because I couldn't find anything that I wanted to use.
That's a really good point, Alex. I mean, so you know, a lot of the products that he did came from looking at products that sucked. Computers sucked, and then he came out with a Mac. MP3 players sucked, and he came out with the iPod. Cell phones sucked, and he came out with the iPhone. It had a lot to do with, you know, scratching those itches.
I mean, before the iPhone, I remember talking to friends, and we'd always say, you know, I hate my cell phone. I just hate all the other ones more.
Right.
You know, and you know, when I had my Trio, I would swear at my Trio constantly. But the other ones I just hated more than, you know, and when I got the iPhone, it was the first one that I enjoy, you know.
Yeah, D. Drew says in the chat room, and this is one thing that I really got out of this and watching the Wednesday tribute to Steve Jobs. Steve was willing to take credit for everything. And in fact, this bugged Johnny Ive a little bit from time to time. He would kind of get, you know, hey, I thought that up. And D. Drew is saying in the chat room, let's not forget that there were really, really great people like Bill Atkinson, like Andy Hertzfeld, like Johnny Ive, in every case, who actually invented this stuff.
Well, I think
they were driven by Jobs, but they were the horses.
Well, I think that in the same way that Steve was able to see a good idea, I'm totally clear he was also able to see great people, like see people that were able to do things. You know, that are. I don't think he survived if you were not great. So I think the people that are working closely to him are all probably best in the world.
Yeah.
Well, it reminds me of some of these stories. Remind me of stories that I hear about actors who've worked with James Cameron on sets, where they will. Whether it was like in the mid 80s or all the way up to Avatar, the interview will cover the same two bases with this actor. Number one, this is some of the greatest work I have ever done. He pushed me to my limits and beyond. I was able to do things I never, ever, ever thought I was able to do. And this is one of the most tremendously proud things I've ever done, this movie that I've done with James Cameron. The number two, I never want to work with him again because it was such a horrible experience. And I keep thinking about all the different projects that could have been done by these people if they had wanted to stick around, if the burnout rate had not been so bad, if the cost of having regular interaction with a boss like that weren't so high to them. And it's possible that all these engineers would have never had a hand in such absolutely world-changing products, but maybe they would have been even happier saying, well, I made a thermostat, and it's a profitable company. It put a lot of people in business. It's saving a lot of energy, and the people who use it are very, very happy with it. It's too bad that I wasn't one of those persons who made that device that totally changed the world, but I'm perfectly happy having my sanity, having my blood pressure right where it should be, and only making a thermostat.
I just don't know if there's enough.
There are people like that, by the way. There are quite a few people.
There are people like that.
Who left Apple.
Yeah. I mean, I will say that as someone who runs a company and also works in production, there is a level of urgency that sometimes is required that being nice doesn't do it. And I'd love to say that I can, that I could be nice all the time. And as unfortunately some people here at Twit have heard.
You're pretty harsh. We can hear you shouting all the way over on this side.
So I think that's why when people say he's apologetic, I'm just like, I kind of understand.
I have to say, reading this book makes me think I really ought to be a bigger dick to my staff.
And we have a show time.
I really enjoyed it. I don't know if you got a chance to watch the video. It's now posted on Apple's site from the Wednesday celebration of Steve Jobs' life. Tim Cook spoke. Bill Campbell, who's on the Apple board and was with Apple in the earliest days, actually came back to Apple when Steve came back. And then this is Johnny Ive speaking. And one of the things Tim Cook said, which I thought was really great, was we had talked about this, I think, that Apple could be paralyzed by this need to ask, what would Steve do going forward? Right. It really hurt Disney when Walt Disney died. The company, in fact, Tim Cook brought this up. He said Steve Jobs pointed this out, that this really hurt Disney. They would say, what would Walt do, instead of coming up with their own ideas. And Jobs said, don't do that. Don't ask, what would I do? Do your own great things. And I've been one of the naysayers who's been saying that I don't think Apple can continue without Steve Jobs. And I have to say, watching this video and reading this book have inspired me that maybe that's not the case.
I think in a lot of ways, there's a lot of places that Apple could really thrive.
And there's great people there like Johnny Ive. In fact, Steve was a designer first and foremost. I don't know what Johnny's personality is, but this is the kind of guy you need to run Apple, or at least have the vision. And that's one thing that Walter Isaacson points out in this book, is that the only person with more power at Apple than Steve Jobs was Johnny Ive. Yeah. Nobody could say anything to John.
He definitely needs to do the product presentations. If you watch that video,
he's good.
He's got huge charisma. Yeah, he was funny and touching. Because Tim Cook, oh my God.
Well, and he's very passionate. He was at the Apple store during the iPhone, I think, 4 launch, and he was just there to see how. Yeah. Or I guess the iPad launch, and he was just there to see, how. Just watch people.
If there's anybody more secretive than Steve Jobs, it's Johnny Ive. And I don't know if he learned that from Steve. They've worked together for 15 years. I think this guy might be the spiritual successor, really, to the Steve Jobs vision. I think he's really quite brilliant. Do watch this video. It's about an hour and 10 minutes. Norah Jones is amazing in it. I have to admit, when she sings Bob Dylan's Forever Young, I just burst into tears. See, even this book causes crying. And then Coldplay performs a set at the end, which is kind of interesting.
When they did this event, you remember they closed all the Apple stores all around the world, and they put up curtains on the windows. Yeah. And I thought, this is kind of typical Apple, right? They made this event secret when they should have made it public.
There was no public memorial, was there?
Right, but this could have been the public
You're right.
memorial.
It would have been an amazing thing to have open the stores and have a big.
Well, they've made it public now. You can watch it, certainly. But I think...
Right, but on your own, you know. But people were going down to the stores. They were laying memorials. They were putting flowers and Post-it notes on the windows. What if Apple had opened the doors to these stores where they normally invite people to go shop and said, "This is our public memorial to Steve. Come on in and see what we're doing." And I thought it would have been
weird.
Really?
It would have.
Well, it would have meant that the employees. It would have meant the employees couldn't concentrate on the project on the actual event because they'd have to worry about security. They'd have to worry about flow. They'd have to worry about there'd be all those other things.
It's more like it would just feel a little weird to me to say that Steve Jobs, we're having a memorial service at Apple. We're going to basically risk shutting down basically every mall that has an Apple store in it. In all these where places that aren't really set up for theaters and aren't set up for like 100 people in this place all doing the same thing. And also, are they saying that yes, this guy was so important to not only just for the people who use Apple products, but to the entire world that kind of live sort of grandiose gesture is necessary? I do think that they really played it exactly right. Everyone who works for Apple at every level will be very, very interested. It also sort of seals that sort of bond of family that they try to create. Everyone who wears an Apple logo is somehow entitled to feeling as though they own a piece of the Apple experience. And then a couple days later, when they've got all the server issues worked out, the ability to say, look, now everybody can go and see this, but do it at your own time, your own place. Don't feel as though we have to bring everything to the world to a stop right now and have a moment of silence for Steve.
I have to say that, one of the things Al Gore did in his speech is exhort the Apple employees to continue making great stuff. And I think
get back to work.
Get back to work in a way. He's an Apple board member.
Now, who can get me set up on iCloud because my syncing's all screwed up? Anybody?
But I
Johnny?
think that was a little. I think in some ways you're right, Andy. I would have liked what Leander suggested because I think it would be nice for us. But I think also you're right, Andy. I think that this might have been an event that was really about galvanizing Apple to continue on. It's not over this now. Let's acknowledge Steve and let's move forward. Let me just play a little bit of the beginning of Johnny Ives.
Most innovative products.
This is Tim Cook.
Johnny has some things he'd like to share with you today. Johnny?
And you're right, Leander. Tim was not particularly inspiring.
He's awful.
This is the guy. This is the spiritual successor, I think, to Steve. That's Lorene Powell, his wife.
Steve used to say to me, and he used to say this a lot, "Hey, Johnny, is a dopey idea." And sometimes they were. Really dopey. Sometimes they were truly dreadful. But sometimes they took the air from the room and they left us both completely silent. Bold, crazy, magnificent ideas. Or quiet, simple ones, which in their subtlety, their detail, they were utterly profound. And just as Steve loved ideas and loved making stuff, he treated the process of creativity with a rare and a wonderful reverence.
This is Johnny Ive. I encourage you to watch the entire video because it's very dramatic. There's great music in it. As I said, you'll cry when Norah Jones sings Forever Young. We're going to take a break, come back with more of Leander Kahney from cultofmac.com. Great to have you, Leander. Alex Lindsay from the Pixel Corps, and of course Andy Ihnatko from the Chicago Sun-Times. And we'll talk about some other news in the Mac world in just a bit. Before we do, though, may I mention my friends at hover.com. Elliot Noss was in town the other day talking about hover.com and some of their initiatives. Elliot is the CEO at Two Cows, which runs Hover. And he said, and this is very much inspired, I think, by Steve Jobs, Hover's focus is on customer service. He says, we're not a domain registry. We're a customer service engine. And I think that's a great way to look at it. There's not much to registering a domain name, despite what some of these other sites may make it look like. It doesn't need to be 50 clicks. You go to hover.com. You can actually go to macbreak.hover.com right now and register your domain. You don't have to click a bunch. And you're there, you're done. But there's things that they build in that, for instance, privacy is automatically built in. They have the no-hold policy for service calls during business hours. And 10% off when you use the offer code MacBreak at macbreak.hover.com. One other thing they're doing now, which is kind of cool, if you register or want to register a domain name, we've been looking. It's really, we're looking for a domain name and a show name for our new gaming show. So I've registered a bunch of names. And let's say I want to register GameOn.com, a name, by the way, that we would love to have, but is long gone.
Yeah, someone thought of that in 1999.
Long gone. But now see what happens. It says Game On is taken. And not for sale, but they do, see these gold stars? These are premium domains that somebody owns but is willing to sell, and the actual price is right there next to it. So if you thought, well, Game On Expo was the name, or Game On World was the name you needed, you could see it right there that it's for sale. So they're doing a little brokerage there. They will also, I love this, trade in names that you've never used. I have dozens of domain names, including most of these game show domain names, that I will never use because I registered them to save them, but I'll never use them. So if you have domains you've registered or renewed at Hover and you want to upgrade to a better domain,
wow, you can sell them off, buy a new one.
Hover will take it back.
Wow.
And they'll credit you everything you've spent on the clunker with Hover. That's the original registration fee, any renewal fees at hover.com.
How do they figure out the values?
Well, because you've spent it with. Oh, you mean these values? I think these are asking prices. I'm not sure how that works.
Wow. Magic.
But some of these are purchased. So that's I think one of the things they're doing is if you have, if you own GameFreelancer.com.
Oh, you can just put up. You can say I'm willing to sell it.
I'm willing to sell it for $9.99.
That makes it so much more efficient because with all the other ones, you're sitting there going, you start bidding on it.
You can't get it. Right.
Yeah.
The other issue, of course, is if I, as the founder of Twit, go and say I'd like to buy a domain name, the price suddenly goes up. I don't understand.
Exactly. Being able to quietly do that.
This is
awesome.
quiet. SanFranciscoGames.com. You could get it without triggering a land rush. So this is one of many things Hover does and does so well. I invite you to go to macbreak.hover.com and take advantage of their great prices, their incredible customer service, their very slick domain management tools. Domain names made simple. And by the way, transfer your domain to Hover for $10, which gives you another year. So it's also a very
It's like a breath
price.
of fresh air. I mean, it's just like it's so. I mean, as soon as I started using it, to be honest with you, after they started sponsoring, I found out about it. I didn't even know they existed, and now I'm just like hooked. I'm like,
yeah, that's all I use.
Yeah,
I've used them all. Macbreak.hover.com. Take a look, and I think you will like it.
Hey, so we have a very it's pretty in the question area.
Yeah, something exciting, something breaking question.
Everybody, the vast majority of folks, there's 3 different questions that add up to, I think, almost 300, almost 30, 300 points or whatever.
Wow.
It's all about the TV. So based on
all right, let's talk about the TV because you know
let's. You know why I brought that up? Let's talk about.
You're
the
guy. You're the guy who said there would be a TV. I'm the guy who said there's no way in the world Apple would be so nuts. And of course, Steve Jobs did something so uncharacteristic. He leaked the next product from Apple here. Now, of course, everybody's digging into it. Leander, let's start with Leander because I don't want Alex to gloat too much. Did you know that there was going to be a TV, Leander?
Well, it's been rumored for years.
Yeah, for years, literally. I think Jason Calacanis started it 2 years ago when he said, I know there's going to be a 50-inch HD TV from Apple. And then everybody mocked him because it never came out.
They've definitely got prototypes. I mean, they've been making these things for sure.
Right.
But there's a lot of weird things about an actual TV. Not just like inventory problems. Where they're going to store these in boxes at the Apple Store. If they're going to start selling TVs, they're going to have boxes, huge stock rooms full of these things. But also the TV business is, people only buy TVs once every 10 years or so. So I don't know. There was all talk about that. Like, could Apple actually make? It would be against their business model, which is sort of high churn. They update models every 18 months or so, every year with products like the iPhone. Would they be able to make a go at the TV business if there was in such a sort of slow-moving business? And of course, a lot of people have already updated their TVs already. They've got flat screens or 3D TVs.
That's why we're being afflicted with 3D TVs is to get people to buy new ones.
I think that one of the issues though is that people didn't update their phones very often before the iPhone either. So there was like, oh, no one, people only get those every 3 or 4 years. Well, now a lot of people like me get them every 12 to 18 months. And the other thing is that I think that for people who have already gotten a flat screen, you have the Apple TV 2. I don't think that's going to go anywhere. I think that gives them that access.
It will integrate the Apple TV.
Yeah, but I think that I for one am just hate dealing with the TV part of my TV. I just want the whole thing to be totally integrated. It's as close as it can be by having the Apple TV connected to it. But it's just dealing with all the other pieces of it, and I'd be very happy to get rid of that. And I think that the big thing that's missing on Apple TV, and I think something they could probably add to the Apple TV too, is the ability to have an iSight. I think when you mix, I still think that the missing piece of FaceTime is that living room experience.
Well,
of families being able to talk
though,
to each other.
what Jobs says is TVs are too complicated.
Yeah, but I think
so. And I've cracked it was the phrase that Isaacson quotes. So, but
I think that hobby. I think
doesn't
the
the
Apple
camera
TV
make it even more complicated?
I know. I think
How do you
that
crack it?
Well, I think that the thing is that the Apple TV. I think the Apple TV 2, this quote unquote hobby, was always let's figure out what people need
Solve
to interact
it, and
with
then
it.
we could put it in the TV.
This is we were all.
Well, that's what baffles me. Just put it in the Apple TV. Let it attach to Is there a party going on in there?
I turned Leander down.
Leander, are you in New York City or something?
Okay, I turned it down.
They're coming to get him. All right, so why not just do the Apple TV then? Why do you have to build it into it?
I still think that gets back into the complexity. I don't want to deal with all these wires in my living room. I don't want all the wires and an iSight sitting over top, some kind of camera sitting on top of it. I just want it all built in, and I want to be able to have my. I want when I want to text message someone while I'm watching a game, and where I want to do all these other things. I want that all to be integrated.
Andy's got to get in here.
No, it's just, that's good for the aesthetic, but here is the instructions on setting up a next-generation Apple TV on one little card that will fit right on top of that little black hockey puck of a device. Step 1, connect an HDMI cable from this device to any HDMI port 2 on the back of your existing TV. Step 2, as complicated as it is, figure out one time and one time only how to switch the input of this TV to HDMI 1, HDMI 2, whatever it is. Step 3, epoxy over every other port. Never touch them again. Never pick up the remote for this TV ever again, and control everything through your Apple TV. There's just so much.
Could they put Siri in the Apple TV puck?
Yeah, they could do that. They could use.
Because that's one thing they could do is have voice commands. Microsoft's about to do that, actually.
I think that it's a good idea. I think that if Apple wanted to make it a more aggressive TV product, even if they go so far as to actually put a TV tuner inside the Apple TV itself and a camera, those are great things. The question that I'm wrestling with is that I cannot see any iteration of the Apple TV that would be a significant improvement over a $99 Apple TV with lots of extra features that you simply plug into whatever TV set you want.
I don't think they have to. It has to be either or. I think that there's enough people that are crazy enough like me to buy it to make it worth making. They already make TVs. This isn't like they make monitors. They make iMacs. They make. There's not much more to it than an iMac. In fact, it's easier to make than an iMac. And so,
well, what if it was like an iPad that you put on the wall? Then had an HD camera so that you could do messaging.
Yeah.
But also touchscreen interface, so that it would be more of an interactive. Well, it would be like an iPad.
If Pages,
you could also watch TV.
If Pages and all the other applications worked, if they open up, because I think that they're going to open up the
Pages,
iOS.
because that's productivity. I don't think people would use it for productivity. They would use it for communication. For entertainment, for communication.
Here's the issue is that my parents would not need a computer if they were able to have an iOS running on their home TV. That's the whole thing, is that they wouldn't need all this stuff. All they do is check their email, surf the web, do all those things. The iPad already does all those things. They don't need... The thing is there's an enormous number of people that don't want to install stuff. They don't want to know how to run Windows. They don't want to know how to run iOS, OS X. They don't want to run any of that stuff. And the thing is, you give them a TV,
And you use Siri for doing email and for things like that.
Yeah, or a Bluetooth keyboard. A Bluetooth keyboard sitting next to them that they can just kind of set down on the coffee table and start typing.
That doesn't sound simpler.
Yeah. But again,
it is when you don't need to use it.
Once again, you're making the case for a really, really cool Apple TV box. You're not making the case for a dedicated TV. And also, is Apple now expected to have a 28-inch model, a 42-inch model, and a 60-inch model? Are they
not to mention that the margins in television aren't very good?
Oh, it's not the margins.
Pioneer couldn't make it work.
Yeah, but the margins aren't good with the PC industry. The margins aren't good with phones. The margins aren't good with any of those things. Apple makes that work.
It's like the old adage about picking up a porcupine. Yeah, I mean it's like the old adage about picking up a porcupine. You can do it safely, but you have to really want to pick up that porcupine. And I feel as though for Apple to put this into an actual TV, they got to really want to sell this as one unit to go through all the trouble that they'd be taking on just by making this integrated unit. I know that they've built these as prototypes. I don't think anybody's doubting that. I'm not saying that it's foolish to think that they'll actually build it. All I'm saying is that my attitude is the same as my attitude before the iPhone and before the iPad, where I can definitely see them making a tablet. However, I'm not inside Apple, and I don't see their day-to-day decisions that create a world in which I could clearly see how they would do it. I'm certain that if they do an actual TV set, it would be sufficiently different from what we now think of as a TV, that as the iPad is from any tablet that's been before.
I think Apple has a history of not liking to have a lot of things connected to other things. I think the idea of, at least Steve did, of not having, and I think that's one of the big reasons that you'd see it. And these are all the same conversations that we had before the phone came out.
I know.
I mean, this is exactly this is like a repeat.
There's some big differences, and of course it makes sense for Apple, who wants to control the supply chain from end to end. I mean, that was the brilliant thing that Apple's done. So they want to disintermediate the cable companies. They want to do everything. They want to sell you the TV shows. They want to sell you the movies. And I understand why Apple would want to do this. After reading this book, I think I get a little more of a sense that Steve was very frequently throwing stuff against the wall to see if it would stick. This might just be one of those that's not going to stick.
Yeah. I mean, you give me sports and news, and I'll never go back to, and then apps for everything else, and I'll never go back to TV ever.
Well, if they could do something,
a lot of people, like my kids already, they don't watch TV. They watch Netflix, and they watch the CBS website or whatever it is.
I think
they don't have TV anymore.
I think Alex hit the nail on the head. It's the only negative to cord cutting right now is live sports, Academy Awards, and news. Everything else you can get, but how do you get those? And that's Apple will have to solve that, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, if they were to do like take the model in which they sell phones and apply that to TVs, where they're going to subsidize the cost of the TV, where it costs them like, let's say, $780 to manufacture, but you can buy it for $399 because Discovery Channel and Turner Classic Movies and HBO and Cinemax and all these other companies are partly subsidizing the cost of this by selling you a contract that simply says, we will sell you content via IP, not on you have to buy this package of 100 channels, but if you want Turner Classic Movies, that's going to be $5. If you want HBO, that's going to be $10. I think that a lot of people would go for that because I've been contemplating cord cutting myself and came to the realization that out of the 400 channels on my cable box, if I can get 8 of them, that's really all I ever need.
Isn't it possible, though, that what Steve meant was not a television set, but what Andy and I are talking about, which is a beefed-up Apple TV? Isn't that possible, that's how he cracked it? That makes a lot more sense from a business perspective.
I think when he said he cracked it, I think he's talking about licensing and finding a way to have all your content come not from an antenna, not from a cable TV system, but making sure that there's a system that you can connect the people who are creating the content to the people who want to consume them, and basically have a pretty direct pay pipeline between the two. That makes it a situation where Turner Classic Movies would really, really want to do this deal. Why they have to sort of go through 8 different steps between a Verizon customer and themselves to get the money that they are due for Turner Classic Movies. Why wouldn't they just simply get $5 out of them directly through an iTunes account?
I think it'd be more likely that Apple would make a deal with Comcast, because the thing is that right now they're in the process of being written out of this, all of this stuff, and I think that they would be very incentivized to try to make sure that they're getting some little cut of somehow that this is working.
Also, there's an element that I first came across like about 6 or 7 months ago, which is that someone first made me think of, but realize that if you're trying to cut out Comcast and Verizon by like canceling your cable service, think about where you're getting your internet service from to begin with. And so they have the ability to say, "Oh, I notice you have HBO. You didn't subscribe to HBO, our HBO package, and you're simply using this service at this IP address. Well, we're concerned about network performance in your neighborhood, so I think we're going to throttle you down to dial-up performance."
Well, they already have 250 gig limits here. I don't know what they have there, but Comcast already limits you to 250 gigs of download a month on the consumer version of their subscription. So, which takes a lot of work to get up to. I think I don't get to 250 gigs. I use it pretty heavily, and I watch a lot of Netflix and do a lot of things. I think I run about 180 to 200.
Well, anyway, we'll see, I hope. It won't be till next year, according to the analysts.
Yeah.
I can't wait. I'm ready.
I'm sorry, I got distracted. I was reading the story of Antenna Gate. Steve Jobs was in Hawaii at Kona Village, and his basic attitude was screw them if they don't like it. But there's more. This is juicy. There's stuff in here. It's just great. I can't wait to read it. Apple estimated to sell, get this. Now, this is something else I learned from this. In the entire life of the Apple II computer, they sold 6 million units. They've already sold more iPhone 4S's in 2 weeks than they sold entire lifetime, 10-plus years, decade-plus of Apple IIs, which made that company. That's how things have changed for this company.
Well, and the other thing...
UBS estimates that iPhone sales will top, get this, 42.5 million units this quarter. This quarter.
And the thing to remember is that whether they end up with an Apple TV or whether they end up with just expanding it,
now,
the issue is not only are they selling just crazy amounts of hardware, but remember that they're getting 30% on every sale of everything made for all of this hardware. They built an ecosystem that is much more efficient from a revenue perspective.
Bloomberg says that Jeff Robin, the creator of iTunes, the guy that they got when they got Sound Jam, is leading the Apple TV thing. He's a software guy. He's the guy who apparently convinced Jobs to do iTunes for Windows. Smart move. The co-founder of Siri has left Apple. I guess my job here is done. I'm going to go somewhere else. Dag Kitlaus. There were several reasons for the departure, according to Kara Swisher, which was amicable and has been planned for a while. They included Kitlaus's family being in Chicago, desire to take time off, and an interest in brainstorming new entrepreneurial ideas. Yeah. Siri has moved on, really. I mean...
Well, not only that, but people always read a lot into these sort of moves without factoring the idea that it's possible for this guy to wake up one morning and realize, I've got $9.8 million, and I've got children who are growing up that I can now stay home and just watch them grow up.
What about
I don't need to rule the... I don't need to be a Steve Jobs. I've got $10 million. I can be very happy for the next 50 years of my life. See ya.
Yeah. New CPUs are faster. Actually, not new, but faster CPUs for the MacBook Pro.
Without even a press release.
No press release. They just kind of show up in the marketplace.
If that's not a message, I don't know what is.
What is the message?
This is their back. I mean, they don't really keep us happy. They're going to keep us happy. They don't want to. Mess with.
Well,
prices did not go up.
MacBook Pro because of the speed of the processor. And, that's just not one of the points that Apple has ever emphasized.
Bigger hard drive.
I don't think I'd be surprised if we see any kind of redesign of the bodies of the MacBooks or the
They're
MacBook
not going to put
Pros.
any energy into it.
They're basically going to keep us going.
42.5 million iPhones in a quarter. That's all you have to say.
Right. And they sold more. They sold more Macs than they've ever sold before. So they are. It's not like they're.
It's not like they need to do anything, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to take a break. We're going to do some questions. We have an iOS and a Lion tip. We've got picks of the week. We are having fun now, baby. Leander, Kahney here from Cult of Mac. You do a great tribute to the iPod in its 10th anniversary. The history of the iPod. Yeah, I really enjoyed reading that. I mean, actually, that's what's Cult of Mac is so great. I mean, you really have been. You're the historian in some ways. the keeper of the flame. You've been around a long
You're
time.
like the hobbits scraddling in that last page of the book, and when you're done, you'll join the elves and leave.
Off to the western lands. Cultofmac.com. He's not a hobbit. He's Leander Kahney. Although I'm not sure. You kind of look like a dwarf, Andy Ihnatko. Maybe. Do you have an axe there? I think it's the sideburns. You look like Gimli, doesn't he? Couldn't he be Gimli?
Last week's like when I was doing something on Fox TV in Chicago, and the weather guy compared me to a character from Master and Commander, which I really approved
I like
of.
that. That's good.
I really have to think about whether I like this one though. I'm not sure if I want to like sort of encourage this one.
What character in Master and Commander did he compare you to?
Could have been any of them.
Arr! My favorite series. I love them. Read every one of them. Alex Lindsay also here from the Pixel Corps. We're going to come back in a moment, but first a reminder that Siri, you may be able to talk to your phone, but I've been talking to my car for years.
What kind of voice does your car have?
It doesn't talk back to me. That's the only thing.
Quiet.
I think they could add that. But the Ford Sync, I've been able to say, set the cabin temperature to 73 degrees, play Bob Dylan, Forever Young. Actually, now you can say play a Pandora station, or Stitcher is it built in. They've added these new apps, the App Link they call it, that your smartphone is controlled with your voice. I mean, it's just really great. The new Sync with My Ford Touch adds a new feature. You can actually have Wi-Fi. Your car is now a Wi-Fi access spot. You just add the little 3D USB dongle. You got 2 USB ports. Plug it in, and they got the antennas built in. They've got WAP built in, so it's secure. And as you drive down the road, all 5 of you can be surfing the net. Well, not the driver. We should keep the driver off the net, probably. Go to Ford.com/technology to see all these amazing technologies they're building into the new Ford cars. They're a pleasure to drive. The engines are powerful, yet very fuel efficient. And reliability, fit and finish, second to none. Alan Mullally's really taken this company and made it a 21st century car company. And if you want to see the technologies, take a look. Ford.com/technology. We're going to have a Ford barbecue here on November 13th.
I think it's the 13th.
13th, yeah. During TWIT, we're going to have the cars out front. You should come.
Who's doing the barbecue?
We're going to do the barbecue. We're going to rent a tent. We're going to have a barbecue. Nice. Invite people to come see the cars and watch the show. In fact, our new gaming show will be launching right about then.
Nice.
So that'll be fun. Ford.com/technology, or better yet, go check out the new 2012 Ford Focus at a Ford dealer near you. You will be very impressed. Let's see here. What are the top questions in our Pixel Core Live?
So one of the questions that we had here was about syncing. It was
just iCloud in general. Would somebody just explain it to me?
There's a cloud.
What the hell? And then the photo stream. All of a sudden, I got all these photos showing up everywhere.
Everything you're taking.
Everything I'm taking.
Showing up on that photo.
It doesn't seem like I can delete them.
No.
You can't delete them.
We didn't talk about that last week. But
that's a little bit annoying.
So my number one complaint.
So I got a picture of my butt. Now it's on every single.
Hey, I have 40 pictures of my ceiling, my living room ceiling, because my daughter picked up my.
So they go into iPhoto. So I'm going to launch iPhoto. There's this now in the new iPhoto. There's a photo stream thing, and everything you take a picture of, however stupid.
And I have it on like 4 computers and 2 iPads.
So is there a way? I can't. No. Is there?
No, because that's the photo stream.
There is an off switch for photo stream.
Yeah, but it's not exactly granular.
I definitely.
Well, I mean, neither's turning off Bluetooth, but you got to accept the fact that at some point you are going to have to figure out how to make your phone do something.
Well, I do.
Siri is good, but it's not that good.
I love that it's backing things up. I do love that.
Yeah.
I just wish that I could go. I mean, I went to iCloud.com. I don't see where I can delete it. I don't know.
Well, because you're not really deleting it, are you? You're just sort of turning off that album. It's a special smart album.
So do I have to delete it on the source material and then it deletes everywhere else? Does that work?
I think that it's... Go ahead.
Every iOS device and every iCloud Studley device that you have that has the photo the photo stream feature is basically contributing to a pool of photos that's actually hosted up on iCloud.
Yeah, that lives somewhere that you can't access and delete.
Exactly, and that's true of iCloud in general. It just
works whether you want it to or not.
Yeah, so the bottom line is that if you're out partying,
Careful what you take pictures of.
when you're out partying, you think it's great, and you have like a photo stream going to your Apple TV at home with the kids, just think about that.
So you can either delete the stream or turn the stream off, but you can't do individual. You can go into your account settings in iCloud. Off. Okay,
You're just being an apologist. You're just being an apologist.
The chat room's telling me how to do this. Go to your account settings.
You can reset that.
And I can reset it. We'll
you can turn them
remove all photos.
Right.
That's the choice.
Yeah. I think this is the number one. This is the number one thing that Apple has to address in an update is that for the photo stream to be.
Wait a minute. Cult of Mac
granular.
has apparently written an article on this. Leander, can you explain?
Don't look at me. I didn't write it.
You're just the one.
I was dreading you calling on me. I knew that was going to happen. I haven't got a clue.
I will say that it is.
Here it is. How to delete photos from iCloud's photo stream. Alex Heath wrote it. cultofmac.com. Log on
and reset.
Click on your name. Well, it deletes everything.
Right.
Well, it doesn't delete it. Well, the device that actually took the photo still has it in its private photo roll. You're just removing it from the shared library inside.
You're basically just clearing the cloud.
Right.
So the cloud doesn't have it. Whatever took it is still in
it. Just seems like
I got to say that the more I use iOS 5 and especially iCloud, the more I'm convinced that this really did need a keynote style event. That didn't just simply gloss over, and with great features like iCloud, and great features like Photos, and great features like document sharing. This is one of these things that really needed someone to walk this through feature for feature for feature, and not only show off how Apple imagined people would be using these features, but would also actually show how these things actually work. Not a tutorial, and all I have to do is turn this on, and that's how you turn that on. And now here's what I can do with my iPhone now that I've turned that thing on.
Now, I think
that there's so much confusion because it affects not only the movement of data, but goodness, had to spend 2 or 3 days figuring out the battery life on the 4S, because so much of it is just there are now a whole bunch of new features that are related to reminders and iCloud that will just keep the CPU active and keep certain radios active.
Oh, yeah.
And you get down to the conclusion that no, this is not a bug, this is not a defect in the software. It's just that all the rules for how do I conserve power in this device have changed now that there's so many new features on it.
Well, that's why I bought a big ass battery.
Yeah,
I mean, really, that's how I solved it.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that on the other side of it, it used to be such a pain in the neck. Because I had so many photos on my iPhone that it was a pain in the neck. Every time I plugged in, iPhoto would open, and it would take literally 10 minutes before it was ready to import whatever the last photo is that I wanted to just merge with iPhoto. And I love the fact that I can sit there and take a bunch of photos, and by the time I get to my computer, it's on my computer.
I do like that.
And
so far, there's nothing I've wanted to delete, but I'm just dreading that day. Because then I'll have to delete it all. The other question people asked, and I'll let each of you answer if you have something to say. Steve, what is the biggest surprise in Walter Isaacson's book? Who wants to go first? Raise your hand. Go ahead, Alex.
I think the biggest surprise was just how simple and basic his house was from the photos that I saw. I mean, and how simple his lifestyle was.
Yeah.
I think that was I think a lot of the other stuff we had heard before, or we had sometimes assumed, at least for me anyway. But I thought it was really interesting of how much of a close to normal life he lived outside of what he was doing.
Andy, were there any surprises?
If we discount one of the big bombshell ones that was sort of leaked in advance, the idea that he could have gotten surgery as soon as he was diagnosed, but he decided to do the nuts and berries approach. I think that, again, I'm only about a quarter of the way through, but the idea that early on it sort of defines some guy who was sort of like the proto Steve Jobs, some hippie Friedland, who
wasn't that interesting? Yeah,
that sort of showed a version of an example of someone who was about 80% of what Steve would become, someone who was very, very he got the idea. The book suggests that Steve's concept of the reality distortion field came from this guy who also was very, very focused and very, very intense and able to be very, very charismatic and get people to do things. This guy had a commune that was sort of a hippie, hey, let's meditate and raise organic vegetables, but quickly turned it into, okay, you're going to be on carrot production and apple production. We need you to manufacture these wine presses that we can then sell.
He ended up becoming a billionaire gold miner.
Right, and then Isaacson. One of the fun things about this book is that it's not like Isaacson is sort of like a background character in this book. Because sometimes he'll talk about the process of putting this together, especially how it gets back to Steve that he's been talking to that Isaacson's been talking to this guy and gets a phone call from Steve saying, "Don't believe anything he says. He's a charlatan. He's this guy. He's all that and the other." So that was kind of cool. If you're writing a movie. Of this as fiction, you would probably want to have like the 18, 19, 20-year-old Steve Jobs meet some guy who was like the Steve that he was going to become, only with not enough enhancements to actually become the Steve Jobs. Just like this is the development version of Steve Jobs.
Mm-hmm. Leander, any surprise? What was the biggest surprise to you in the book, or shock, or something you didn't know? Given that none of us have finished the book yet.
Yeah. No, I haven't finished it. Actually, I started reading the end, then I started reading the beginning, then I started reading the middle. So I've jumped around, but I've read most of the last few chapters. And he didn't see Siri until he resigned in August this year. So Siri, they showed him Siri at the board meeting where he went to tell the board that he was stepping down as CEO. That was a surprise because I thought he would have. Yeah. They bought Siri 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah, Al Gore told that story at the memorial. And they asked, I guess it was Steve, that they were showing him Siri, and he says, well, are you a boy or a girl? And Siri says, well, they haven't assigned me a gender yet. And apparently got great gales of laughter from everybody, including Steve Jobs. He would have. It does seem like something he would like.
Yeah.
He was a prankster, much like Woz. That is a shock that he hadn't seen that sooner. Maybe lending some credence to the contention that Jobs didn't pay that much attention to the 4S, that he was really focused on the iPhone 5. That doesn't seem possible, given.
Well, Siri would have been part of the iPhone 5.
I wonder how involved he's been in Apple these last few years since he's been sick, because a lot of the last few chapters just show that he was very, very ill, and he was mostly he spent a lot of time convalescing. So it made me wonder, how involved he was in the whole iPhone 4S, let alone the iPhone 5.
It was Bill Campbell who told that story, by the way, not Al Gore. Thank you, chat room. Yeah, Bill Campbell. That was an interesting story. I mean, one of the things I was surprised is Bill was one of the people who said, yes, we should fire Jobs. I think we get the most detailed, accurate account ever of how Jobs was ousted by Scully, and it's much more complicated and convoluted.
I think he needed. I think in many cases it's easy for people to say that Apple just drifted without him, and that might be the case. But he needed to go do next. He needed to go fail, and then he needed to come back with what he learned.
When Jobs was 22 and the founder of the company, they brought in Mike Scott, Apple's first president, and this was not a shock to me. I'd kind of heard it before, but it confirmed it. Basically, to manage Steve, and Mike Markkula was in. Basically to manage Steve. Even John Scully was expected to manage Steve, and when John couldn't, that's when Steve was ousted by the board. I share a little bit of the dismay that you have, Leander, reading this book. It is definitely warts and all, but it's real. I found it fascinating. It's very hard for me to put it down. I want to know the next.
It's undoubtedly a fascinating book. Yeah, totally. Yeah. It is. Yeah, there's so much detail in there. I mean, people were saying on Twitter, stop the news stories, stop all the leaks. There's going to be nothing for us to read, but there is. There's so much. Every few pages, there's fresh stories.
There is absolutely plenty.
I guess that was another surprising thing, that he was that way all the way to his very, very first job. That he was abusive and abrasive, and no one really liked him or wanted to get around with him. That seemed like the sort of thing that only happens once you have the liberty of having lots of power to throw around.
He believed that his or a bad thing. He believed that his fruitarian diet would keep him from having any body odor.
Right.
Which it was, to all accounts, nobody else agreed with. In fact, when he was working at Atari, they made him work the night shift because nobody wanted to be around him during the day. He was too stinky. And his bare feet, he wouldn't wear shoes. The other thing I thought was very interesting was how close Gates and Jobs were at the beginning. They were almost peers and buddies.
Do you think that in some ways Android for Jobs was Microsoft again?
Yes.
Like he got close, he started working really closely, he brought somebody onto the board. I think that a lot of this, one thing that becomes very clear is that this is his issue with Android was very personal. You know, he brought someone on the board, he talked to them, he showed them a lot of stuff, and then they went out and did something that was much like his. And I think that was the fact that, not just the fact that they stole something from him from the outside, like looked at the iPhone and did something like it, it's that he had brought someone in so personally and in the same way that he did Gates.
Betrayal and abandonment are a thread throughout the book, and I presume accurately portraying his life throughout his life. You know, some of the sadness is that Steve must have been in many ways a very unhappy person, much of the time. There were moments of great happiness, but also he even says he was somewhat bipolar, where he'd be very depressed and then very manic and excited. Anyway, it's a great book. I think we're fortunate that we had a biographer of Walter Isaacson's quality who had such access to somebody before his death, and that Jobs was so forthright in this, and the people that Isaacson spoke to were forthright, and Jobs let them tell the truth. And in some ways, it's a great legacy from Steve Jobs which he intended for his children, but we benefit from it. That that the truth came out about this very complex, difficult, prickly fella.
I think you rarely see an authorized biography that is so warts and all.
Wow.
You know, just includes everything.
Yeah. Let's get our iOS tip of the week. I forget, who does that? Do you do that?
I do that.
Do you have one?
Yes. So this came in. I got this from my Twitter feed. So when I twittered out that
I need a tip,
I was like, hey, what should I do? And there was a whole bunch of people that responded. And one of the things, so if you go into settings and you go into your keyboard settings. In your one of the things that's kind of interesting is this is under general and then keyboard, is down at the bottom you have shortcuts that I didn't realize were there. They're really cool. So anyway, this is a little like a simple text expander kind of thing.
Yes.
Where basically you can add a shortcut. Yes. So you say I want to add a shortcut, and whatever the phrase is that I want to add, and it can be pretty long. And then you can add a shortcut that you can just type in. So I have the address to here, for instance, and when I want to do that, I just type in, here, ADDR, and it pops up, and I hit return, and boom, that's my address. My address is imported in. So it's very much in the same way, things that people ask all the time.
It's
or
really
things that you're texting.
Yeah.
And, it's just hidden. It's one of those, there's so much stuff. When people started sending in the tips, by the way, now I have enough, just from that one ping, I have enough tips for like the next 3 months.
My tip is come back and explain how iCloud works someday.
Okay, I'm working on it.
We'll give you a 2-hour show.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll let me think about that. So anyway, but the and here's the great thing about iCloud, though. To talk about it, I just typed that in, and my note showed up seconds later in my computer.
Yeah, I turned it on. I mean, it's good to have.
So anyway, so that's my little tip is you can turn on, you can put all your address and all the things that you need to send people constantly are coming in. A lot of times typing on that little keyboard, your address gets tiring over and over and over again, or whatever those things are. And
I'll throw in another tip. The camera on this phone really is that good. And if you want to go to Lisa Bettany's Cam Plus site, campl.us, she got all the old iPhones and took the same picture with each. That's the original iPhone. Horrible. 3G, horrible. Now we're getting okay. The 3GS, not bad. The iPhone 4, getting better. Look at the reflections. I think that's where you see some big differences. And the detail, I've been very happy with the iPhone 4S. It's doing a great job. Yeah. She even compares it with a Canon S95. And yes, there's more detail in the S95, but I think the 4S is good enough to do make your point-and-shoot camera. Don't you agree?
Yeah. I don't.
And she also does a landscape, original iPhone. This is with lots of light, obviously. 3G, 3GS. Really starts to get good on the iPhone 4. 4S, I think this is the detail, the clarity. Look at the detail in the shadows even. It's a little bit better on the 95, and, of course, a lot better on the 5D, but
at that size, it's hard to
yeah, how could you? But look at that.
Yeah, great.
That's pretty darn good. So I've been very happy with that camera. It's fast. It does a great job. That's a good post if you want to check it out. Lisa Bettany's Cam Plus blog. And our lion tip, Mr. Ihnatko.
Well, this is actually a Mac OS tip. This is a feature that's been in the OS since the early 90s, but people really have forgotten that it actually exists. But now that we have speech assistance on the iPhone, people forget that the Mac OS has a speakable items feature, where if you go into systems, if you go into preferences, click on speech, and then click on speech recognition, there's an on-off switch for this thing called speakable items. And if you turn that on, you will see in the little corner of the screen just a little microphone logo. And whenever you either hold down a special hotkey on the keyboard, it defaults to escape, or say a special turn on a continuous recognition, you can basically just talk commands to the Mac and have it do stuff for you. So you can do things as simple as launch Safari, switch to Safari, all the way to mail to Leo Laporte, and then it will look through your address book, find someone who matches Leo Laporte, and then create a brand new email message to this person. It has a long library of things you can do. One of the most useful features is just the speech command, show me what to say, in which case it'll drop a pop-up box on the screen that will just give you a list of things you can try to say that will actually work. And the added enhancement is that there is a special folder inside your library folder. If you go to your home folder, then go to library, you have to hold down the option key over the Go menu to reveal your library folder. But go to the library folder, go to speech, then go to a folder called speakable items. And now anything you put inside this folder, the name of that file becomes a speakable item, like a feature. So if you did something like let's say that you've already created an automator workflow that is essentially your end of the day, make sure that everything's tidied up, tidy up your desktops, do a backup, and then shut down the computer. If you simply save this in that folder as I'm going home, close down the computer, and then go to sleep, you literally just name it that phrase. And so all I have to do is just, as you're about to turn off the lights, saying, computer, I'm going home, turn off the computer, and then go to sleep. Wow. And then it will activate that. Again, it's not parsing the sentence, so to speak. It's simply saying you created something with that name on it. And you can do, the fact that you can put these things in a special folder means that if you are handy with AppleScript and Automator, you really can do really complicated things.
Let me try this. Wait a minute. Let me just try this. So I'm going to press the escape key. What time is it?
It's 12:40.
Wow.
Right. Tell me a joke.
Tell me a joke.
Oop. Hold it down, wait a half a second, and then say it.
Tell me a joke.
Here, let me.
I wonder if it's confused. But I'll give you, by the way, a really nice little tip somebody told me about. It comes with some basic voices, and that was using Alex, nicely named, to talk back to me.
Yes, I thought that was an excellent choice, Leo.
There are lots of choices.
And you can buy more.
Yeah, but these are all free. Remember the old silly ones like cellos and bubbles? Those are not normally installed, but you can install them. But there are foreign languages. Like I can have Daniel, Emily, and Serena. You want to hear Daniel? Yeah, he says.
Hello, my name is Emily. I am a British English voice. Hello, my name is Serena.
Bonjour. Enough jokes. Back to work.
Enough jokes. Back to. That's
back
cute.
to work.
Why not?
Tim Cook must have put that one.
Enough jokes. Back to work.
Here you go. Tell me a joke.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Dad.
Tad who? Tad who?
Dad's all folks.
Oh.
They're not great. They're not great jokes, but yeah. They're back in the mid '90s when I was a bit of more of a nut about automation. I was doing so much with speakable items that I actually set up microphones next to my work desk, next to the chair that I often sat in when I was editing stuff, and one next to the door. And so there were lots of scripts going on, so I could just be sitting at the sofa and saying, "Computer, is there any interesting email?" So which would fire off a script.
Do you use computer as the key? So you can listen continuously with the keyword, and they suggest computer. Is that a good one?
You can use whatever you want. If you want to say, "Oh, Genie,"
So if I say computer now, it will. Computer. Do I just talk to it?
Did you have to turn that feature on? Do you have listen continuously with keyword turned on?
Yeah. And then keyword is required before each command. So I should be able to say, computer, tell me a joke, right? Computer, tell me a joke. I think it doesn't like me.
It's possible you don't have the right input, or it's possible that it's a little bit befuddled. listen when you're at the desktop. Obviously, listening while the keys press is the easiest way to do it. But yeah, you can set it up that way. I wish it weren't quite so labor intensive. I mean, it really is one of those features that they did it, they put it in there, and they're not willing to obsolete it, but they're not willing to enhance it. I mean, it would be so cool if you could just do computer, play me anything by Elvis Costello.
Right.
And that's something that it could easily parse, but that's something you'd have to set up a script for. But you can set up a script because an Apple script, you can have speakable items basically match anything that's being said against any known list. So you could write one line of Apple script that says, build a list out of every artist that's in my iTunes library.
Wow.
And then another line that simply says, listen for anything inside this list, then get the thing that was selected from that list via audio, and then simply play that artist. And that's something you could write in like maybe a half a dozen lines, I'm thinking, and then just put it in the speakable items folder.
I have to play
So
with
unfortunately, it's labor intensive, but it's a fun feature. So there's enough in here that's built in that you can have a lot of fun with it.
Right. We're going to quickly get our picks of the week. Leander, do you have a pick for us? It could be software or hardware. You don't have to because, we don't want to throw you or anything.
Oh, yeah.
Something you like. Like you've been using a lot lately.
All I've been doing is working lately. I haven't done anything. I haven't got anything new that I can think of. I can have something to plug though.
Go ahead, plug.
Can I plug my? This is the official Cult of Mac T-shirt.
Oh, I like it. What does the MILF stand for?
You get it?
I get it.
Say it.
No one.
I get it. It's a Macintosh I'd like to friend.
Right.
Yes.
I thought this was funny, but no one else did.
I love it.
I think it's funny. I don't know if I'd wear it.
And it's available from cultofmac.com, right?
Actually, yeah. Or My Tees. Might, M-I-G-H-T, T-E-E-S. We partner with those guys. They're up in Seattle, and they make a nice shirt. So we have a few of these left. If anyone wants to pick one up for Christmas.
Awesome. Alex, Lindsay, your pick of the week.
Okay, so there's a new app that just came out from a friend of mine, Emery Wells, and it is rocking. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He used to be on MacBreak video on MacBreaks when we were covering it. So Emery has made an app called Kata Data. And it is just a great. This is a little geeky. This is for people who are doing production. The production guys from Twitch should be listening right now. So a lot of times you're trying to figure out, you're on set and like, do I have enough hard drive space to put this file? To
who loves this? Vince LaFleur wrote about it.
Yeah. This is, so basically you can go in here and type in. I've got a 200. I've got.
Oh, well, we could just show it on the screen because I can't use it because I don't know how it works.
So anyway, so you say I've got a 600 gigs left. How much space do I have?
Recording time do I have?
And I can change it saying I got a DSLR. I'm shooting 24p, and it says we got 30 hours. Well, what if I have Arri Alexa? Well, at 1080p, well, you got 41 hours. If I have a Sony F3 and I can change my codec, and I can decide what I'm capturing, and it gives me the number of hours that I have left to capture. And this is the kind of stuff that we have to deal with on set all the time, and you have to come up with it quickly, and you have to come up with it accurately. And if you don't, you run out of drive space, and then people are upset, and clients don't want to pay, and it's all kinds of fun stuff. So, it's called, and it's like $5. So it's just a great deal if you're doing production. You need this. That's it.
MIGHTEES.com, by the way, is the site that Leander was talking.
There's a lot of great shirts there.
Yeah, there's some.
I like that say anything pose. That's very cool.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, there's some really good Steve Jobs shirts there too. And there's the MILF. A Mac I'd like to friend. See, I got it right. Andy Ihnatko, your pick.
Sometimes you really have to vote with your consumer dollars to support and enhance the creation of really, really awesome, but I don't know how useful things. Today, ThinkGeek started taking orders for the Iris 9000 iPhone 4S stand. This is a plug-in stand, a desktop stand for your iPhone 4S that turns it into like the front control panel from the HAL 9000. And also includes an integrated like microphone and speakerphone. So from anywhere in the office, you can say, Siri, move my appointment until next week, and then the glowing eye will like flash as Siri says things back to you. It's not going to be available. There's a picture. I put a link in the show notes if you want to show it. It really is a perfect looking replica of Hal's eye there. It's $59. It's not going to be shipping until like the end of winter.
Geeky.
But it's like, I shouldn't think about this. I should just buy this and then be surprised 4 months later, or 5 months later when this actually arrives. This it's just too cool a thing not to have.
I'm sorry, Dave. Let's see if it. But now you have. I want voices for Siri. I don't know what's going on. It's looking at you. Oh, I see. We're in the movie. I get it. That's the movie music. Siri's looking at you, Dave. Anyway, thinkgeek.com. It's only $60.
It's too long of a start.
Yeah.
If they're making videos,
I'm bored.
You got to get to that faster.
I'm bored. Well, it's supposed
30
to
seconds.
set you up that you're in.
I know, but 30
really,
seconds. They need to do that in 5.
All you have to do is see the photo of it, and if you've got $59, you're soon not going to have $59.
This is every bit as exciting as Solaris.
They just make it way too easy to not really think this. It really is just too cool a thing to. I have to have one.
All right, we're going to jump to the last 20 seconds. Here it is. It's talking to you now. Here we go. Give me the audio.
Open the pod bay doors.
That's a rather insensitive thing to say to an intelligent agent.
Well, that's a long way to go for that. Boy. By the way, I have purchased the, obviously my pick's going to be this book, but I've purchased this book in Audible form. It has it on Audible, quite nicely read.
You put your money where your mouth is over and over and over.
I purchased it on Kindle because I wanted to get it like Leander did early. I got it at 7 p.m. on Sunday night, right when the 60 Minutes started. I purchased it on Apple's iBook. No, they were good. They didn't ship it till midnight. And then I ordered a couple of hardcovers from Amazon. And, it's kind of worth getting the book because there's pictures in here that don't reproduce well. This is the inside cover. And that's just a beautiful picture of Steve.
I found that to be so fascinating. Just this
wife Lorena and his son Reed, and that just is beautiful.
Seeing his actual desk, like what kind of clutter do you put on your own
You would
desk?
expect it to be a little tidier, wouldn't you? But no.
And you gotta imagine that every Mac developer is like magnifying like those shots 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Is one of my company icons on that desktop?
Yeah, it's just beautiful.
He's using my calendar app. Yay!
Yeah. It's really neat. It's well worth buying the book. It's a good. Not only is it a good read, but there are lots of pictures in here that you won't get in the Kindle. You get them in the Kindle version. They're very washed out. The iBook version, at least they look good. But I think owning the book is probably worthwhile. That's it for MacBreak Weekly. Thank you for joining us. We do this show every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1800 UTC at twits.tv. But, you don't have to watch live because we record it, right? And you can get it after the fact. Simply
Kinescopes are being couriered.
We'll have video
to participating networks.
That's right. You can go to your local theater and for a nickel watch MacBreak Weekly.
There are people waiting outside to grab this tape the moment we finish.
We'll courier it to our developers.
By bonded licensed courier provided by the Brinks Corporation.
What else should I say? We do when we do the show, MacBreak Weekly, Andy Ihnatko, Chicago Sun-Times, CWOB.com. Get your eyes checked.
We're very excited about our live stream this Thursday.
What's going on Thursday at PixelCore.com?
Frederick Johnson's coming in. We're doing a live Halloween photography shoot, and people can actually watch it live.
Are you going to have costumes?
I don't
Zombies?
know. He's planning. There's going to be something. We're bringing in a model, and we're going to make her look scary.
Wow.
And
right.
and so we're going to. But he's going to set all the lights up and shoot all the stuff, and then you can actually watch it live. Him working. So if you're into photography and you want to see how a professional photographer sets all the stuff up, you can watch the whole thing live, multi-camera angles and everything else, and you can ask questions. So you'll be able to use that question engine that we were using today and ask questions, and Frederick will actually answer your questions that you have during the live event. So it's kind of us experimenting with showing kind of this. We've been playing around with letting people watch productions live, and so this is going to be a big experiment. So it's this Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Can't wait. Leander Kahney is at cultofmac.com. That's his website, and well worth reading if you are a Mac fan. Join the cult. No shoes or Kool-Aid required, just a browser and your Macintosh. Great to have you, Leander. Thanks for joining us.
Sure. Thank you, Leo.
And thank you all for being here. We'll see you next week. Now get back to work. Break time's over.